Oil prices continue to climb as the conflict with Iran hits the 1-week mark. Global crude prices have surged past $90 a barrel after strikes on Iran disrupted energy supplies and shipping routes in the region, raising concerns about higher gas prices right here in the U.S. But the effects could be wide-ranging. Everything from shipping to air travel will likely get more expensive. Joining us now to help explain what's really driving the spike in oil prices and what it could mean for consumers is Ed Hurst, Energy Fellow at the University of Houston. Ed, it's always great to have you with us.
Good morning. Good to be here.
I read it went to 110.
Yeah.
Went a little higher, 113, 117. Brent was, again, a bit higher. Brent is an importing market, by the way. They have to get their oil by way of the Middle East.
So what exactly happened? I mean, we're talking the Iran conflict, but what exactly happened last week that caused the push for the oil prices to go above $90 a barrel?
So Iran announced they'd closed the Strait of Hormuz, and so far nobody's really tested that. None of the tankers are going through. So we have tankers loaded with millions of barrels of oil above the strait and a lot of empty tankers below the strait wanting to get in. It's stunning that the U.S. military left this exposed. This has been the critical choke point for global oil markets, for the global economy for decades. We've all known this was a possibility, a probability, and a likelihood. And yet the U.S. military appears to have no answer for this. Losing, say, roughly half of the oil that comes through the strait, on our analysis, and this is in an old paper that we did, Crude Oil Imports and National Security, we could see the price of oil go up 250% over its baseline, which was, a couple of days after we realized that Venezuela was not going to have any impact on the market. $56 a barrel. So, with our math, we would see an increase well over $150 a barrel, perhaps as much as $200, which is what the Iranians threatened today. They're looking to keep the strait closed, and they're also, of course, attacking the oil-producing infrastructure of Kuwait and Saudi Arabia. Just as they attacked the LNG production facility that Qatar has, taking 20% of the global supply of LNG off the market by attacking Qatar, that's had an immediate impact across the U.S. The price of diesel is up. Why? Well, because those economies that can switch from LNG to petroleum have done that switch. They bid up the price of diesel on global markets. And no refiner in the United States is going to give diesel away when they can ship it out to a port and get more. Also, in New England, the price of natural gas has gone up. They get their marginal supplies, the last bits of natural gas to fill up their network via the global LNG market. We haven't built new pipelines to the Northeast in decades. That's driving up natural gas for industrial use, for heating, and of course it's going to drive up the price of electricity in the New England states.
But Ed, I am curious, though, how much of this spike is connected to the actual supply disruption versus just fear and speculation within the markets?
Pretty much all of it. I mean, the oil hasn't been destroyed. We know it's there.
Right.
It's just at this point in the Asian economies that are tremendous importers of crude oil, their supplies have been cut off completely. There's panic buying going on in India and throughout Southeast Asia. Very few, I think Malaysia's and Indonesia are oil independent, if you will. But Japan's not. China's not.
Well, right. China is doing better from what I've read simply because they're much more electric than they were 20 years ago with vehicles and electric rail lines. So they're not as dependent on oil as even the United States.
Well, it's a matter of degrees. China has a huge petroleum reserve as well. We don't know if they've tapped into that yet.
Well, we do too.
No, we haven't tapped into ours.
No.
Japan's made noises about opening up theirs. But if we were to open our strategic petroleum reserve for this purpose, I don't know that the public would be too thrilled about that because most of that oil would be going overseas.
But then circling back to Iran, how important is Iran and the surrounding region to the global oil supply?
Iran was providing about 1.5 million barrels a day to the export market, the global market. We priced that out, if you will, when oil got to $71, $72 a barrel. That's the price response we'd see with just 1% of the global supply being eliminated.
They're about 20%. Is that what comes through the Straits?
Roughly 15 to 20% of the global supply comes through the Straits. Kuwait, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Iraq. The other producers are the ones that are bottled up here.
So looking at this from a consumer impact type situation or perspective for drivers right here in Houston, how quickly could we see higher prices at the gas pump?
We already have.
Yeah.
We already have. I spent a lot of time on I-10 this weekend, and at one of our favorite stations, the price went from $2.78 a gallon to $2.99 a gallon yesterday over the 2 days.
Now, how much of that is false?
Mm-hmm.
None of it is because again, the refiners are facing buyers from overseas who are on the phone, on the computers, buying and trading cargoes. The global fuel market operates just in time for the most part. The gas station that you use has got maybe 5 days of capacity, 5 days of inventory. The distributor that fuels it may have 5 or 6 days of inventory at most. The refinery is not going to have more than a week or two on hand, and so when there's a run on it, the price responds very, very quickly. That's how it gets allocated.
Does it feel like we were prepared for any of this? It feels like
absolutely not.
The government said, let's just go in there. This war will last 2 days, and maybe the oil market won't even notice that this has happened. And they were completely wrong.
It certainly appears that way.
Yeah,
so then I'm curious, how long will prices stay high for crude oil then?
Until the strait is unblocked, until we see those barrels start to flow. What we're running into across the globe right now are shortfalls in deliveries to refineries. In some of the different nations, India is suffering through a real run on gasoline stations. There's panic buying. Those stations will be out of gasoline by the end of the week, and their suppliers will be out of gasoline, and some of the refiners will not be able to operate because they won't be getting supplies. And so the oil and gas traders, gasoline traders, will be diverting cargoes that say would be coming to the U.S. or would be going to the EU, to other ports where they can get more money. Crude oil traders, jet fuel traders, gasoline traders, these, they're not religious. If they can make an extra 5 cents a gallon, they're going to. So
then, as you're mentioning, how could this affect industries like shipping and air travel?
It's going to be expensive. The impact on air travel is more nuanced because there's also what economists would call demand destruction. There's not a whole lot of flying that's going to be going on in the Middle East and across that area. And so demand for jet fuel will go down apart from any use for the military. Asian economies are not going to have the jet fuel, the supplies that they need. And so there's going to be a shortfall in the ability to actually service those flights. The U.S., we should be fairly fortunate. We should not have lines for jet fuel, lines for diesel, or lines for gasoline. We're just going to have to pay more.
So, and that's what I was going to say. So beyond gasoline then, what other everyday cost are we likely to see the effects of the oil prices if they continue to stay high?
Well, we'll see this with Uber. We'll see this with Lyft. We'll see this with Amazon. We'll see this with FedEx, with UPS, delivery charges, right. The diesel's coming through the system. We're going to see a hit to the ag community. We're coming out of winter. It's planting season, and the price of diesel has jumped. And so it's going to be more expensive to plant the fields, as if being victimized in the tariff wars weren't enough for the farmers, or In Texas, we've lost 153,000 ag workers, according to Texas Monthly, year over year through October because of ICE enforcement. So, it's going to fall unevenly across the economy.
Well, every truck and every car is going to, and every plane, everything that uses gasoline, and those products they have to move around the country are all going to go up. So I've heard some talk that, well, what do you think? That we would escort ships through the Straits of Hormuz? That seems absolutely absurd.
No, it's the one solution, and French President Macron came out and said so today also. But it's not a perfect solution. It's going to be costly for the military. There are pipelines that can divert some of this oil out to the global market. At most, though, that's 7 million barrels a day, and we're looking at the Strait, which provides between 15 and 20 million barrels a day. The president has said that he would financially backstop any losses. I guess the U.S. would offer insurance, but that doesn't help with the men and women serving on the ships if they're wounded or lose their lives, or any of the environmental consequences. And for goodness sake, just getting the U.S. to pay off on a tanker that was sunk, is going to be a problem as well.
Does it benefit Iran at all to close this?
I think Iran's strategy is, if we're suffering, we're going to make everybody suffer.
So that's their attitude. So they don't get paid like a toll to have it open. So they make nothing from it.
No, it's a scorched
just a free
defense.
Up and down through the Straits of Hormuz. Well,
so and if we're looking ahead, talk to us a little bit about any key things that the energy markets are watching right now that could push prices even higher. And obviously on the flip side, what developments could actually bring prices back down?
Well, seeing a coordinated effort, I'll start with the second question first. Seeing a coordinated effort with the U.S. military and allies to protect shipping through the Strait would be fabulous. The Secretary of Defense and the President have talked about destroying Iran's Navy. That's only one component. We know their drone fleet is extraordinarily effective and really inexpensive. They likely have hundreds of drones pointed at the Strait. We don't have a way of stopping those just yet. That's what's important to calm the global oil markets. What could push the price up? Having the Strait closed for another couple of 3 weeks, and having Saudi Arabia shut in production, other nations having their production facilities bombed by Iran, that's all it's going to take to see $150 a barrel oil very quickly.
But it's interesting. We've discussed kind of the global impacts of this. We even talked about the local consumer, but I am curious if higher oil means if there's any type of short-term boost to Texas producers.
Yes, it will help some Texas producers, absolutely. They may put a few rigs back out in the field if they can hedge forward. The general response, though, for the folks in the Permian is, well, this is nice and we'll enjoy it. Keep in mind the oil patch, the oil and gas sector has still been the worst performing sector in the S&P 500 for 12, 15 years. Wall Street's not throwing capital at the oil patch, and a war does not a long-term trend make.
Well, it's hard to make a lot of corporate decisions when the government is saying this isn't going to last long. This will be over soon. And so you're going to go and put a bunch of rigs out there, and then it's over, and you've got a bunch of rigs you don't need.
You're going to enjoy the fact that you're making a little extra money right now, pay some bonuses, pay down some debt, and go back to the status quo, hopefully in 6 to 8 weeks, 12 weeks.
Well, hopefully, but maybe not. This could last a lot longer than anybody wants.
It could, and it's really going to hurt our allies. The U.S. is in really great position right now. We import 4 million barrels a day of crude oil from Canada, our closest ally. The Canadians have us as their best customer. It's going to cost us more, but it's not really going to disrupt our economy as much as it's going to disrupt economies across the world.
Well, I did read that inflation's likely to go up maybe double from what the forecasts were. The forecasts were at about 2.3%, and now by the end of the year might get to 4.5%. Have you?
Entirely possible.
Because of all of this?
Depends on how it works its way through. Certainly everything else that we've been looking at in the U.S. economy has pointed towards a recession. Employment off, job growth off, inflation up, the tariff war, the uncertainty of the tariff war, off again, on again. Where are the tax revenues going to go? Where is the spending going to go? Sure, the government's going to be spending a lot of money in defense and defense rearming, but that's not going to trickle down through the rest of the economy. It's going to be concentrated in a couple of sectors.
But, looking at the U.S., we are one of the world's biggest oil producers. So I'm curious, why don't we have more insulation from these type of global shocks?
Oh, because it's a global market. And so, the guys in the Permian have a pipeline straight to the Gulf Coast. They can sell to anybody, and they will. When President Obama eliminated the oil export ban that had been in place since the Nixon administration, that opened our domestic markets directly to the export and the global market. For a while, we were pretty insulated, but we were net importers. Today we're, give or take the month, we can be even in terms of what we import versus what we export. It's important, though, that we import the heavy crudes from Canada because that matches up very well with our refineries. So as a North American bloc, Canada, the U.S., and Mexico, we're quite self-sufficient on oil.
Yeah. So the problem is, if we're sending it somewhere else, then what we do have, we have a lot of it, but we can charge a lot more for it, and we have to.
Well, nobody in Texas is going to give away oil at a price less than you could get in Ghana or in Guyana or in the North Sea.
So bottom line, Ed, what do you think we should be watching over the next few weeks that's going to tell us whether gas prices are about to jump?
Well, I think they're jumping. There's nothing you can do to stop that until we start to see a lot of tankers flow through the Strait of Hormuz. And then we're going to have to see the Asian economies that desperately need these to receive them and get their domestic markets into equilibrium with fuel supplies going out to their citizens. That's where the disruption is. But because, for example, India is going to be buying a lot more gasoline and diesel on the open market and crude oil on the open market, that's going to have an impact all the way out to the Permian Basin.
And what about China?
China produces about 4.5 million barrels a day, consumes between 14.5 and 15 million barrels a day. They've been a big customer of Russia. I think the president and the Secretary of Energy announced they were relaxing sanctions on Russia. But, the Russian oil is getting to market anyway. That's just giving Putin a bonus. That's not going to add anything new and help anyone out right now.
Well, I still think that our government working against electric vehicles and electric rail lines is in the long run hurting us. I think we were on the right track, and now we're on the wrong track.
Yeah, but now a high price of gasoline kind of makes that argument for itself. And so it's now a lot more expensive and will be over the next several months to drive an internal combustion engine vehicle than it will be to drive an EV.
Yeah, well, we need to wake up and smell the Folgers on all that.
Ed Hurst is an energy fellow at the University of Houston. Ed, it's always great to have you on Hello Houston. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.